Hey everyone, want to share a quick thought for you today. See my daughter be teaching me those lessons again. She took a remote of mine's, actually, a very skinny remote, and she's always in my stuff. Parents, you get, like, what's the point of buying toys when they're just gonna play with anything in the house? Anyways, I digress. But she takes a remote of mine's, and she thought it would be fun to hide it from me. So she hides it. I'm gonna show a picture of it in in between the crack of these boards on the deck, and she thought it would be funny because it's a good hiding space. From her from her perspective, I can see how it is a very good spot because me and her play games. It makes sense in her context. The only thing is she didn't really anticipate that when she did that, there was no way to get it back. So I tried to get it back. She tried to get it back. It was gone. And I started to feel a little bit of frustrated because it's one thing when you're playing and but when it's like now our game is gonna cost me extra money. Parents, or anyone that loses something, you're like, this wasn't too fun. It's fun for you, but not fun for me. So I was getting frustrated, and then I thought about all the times when I was younger, when I used to break and lose things from my dad. I used to get in trouble for that, but sometimes I wouldn't get in trouble for that. So it was easy in that instance when I thought about the fact that I was forgiven in that area to be able to extend mercy to my daughter at that area. Obviously, she didn't really mean for it to get lost, but just in general, I thought, man, I used to do the same type of stuff. Maybe I need to start locking up my stuff because she's going to do the same thing. But it's the fact that I was forgiven in that area that I was able to forgive. So it reminds me of a story in the Bible where there's a king who lends out money to a bunch of his servants, and this king is coming to settle his debt with all these servants. And he comes to this one servant who owes him a crazy amount of money. Basically, he's not able to pay this back. And back then, if you weren't able to pay back, not only could you repossess the person's property, but you can repossess them. Basically, you could sell them to get that money back. So this is what the king decided to do. And the servant begs, 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 give him some more time for money. Like, give me some more time, I'll pay you back. You know how people are when you lend them money. Give me some more time, I'll pay you back. Well, obviously, you can see the stress of this servant because he's going to be sold into slavery. His kids are going to be sold into slavery. He's probably stressed out. You can see why he's begging for more time. But the king actually does something that we don't expect. The king actually says, it's okay, you don't have to pay back anything. Not only does he not necessarily give him more time, what the servant want, he says, you don't owe me anything. So he's now debt free. But unfortunately, what this servant does with his new lease on life, he goes to collect money that people owe him. So he goes to a fellow servant who owes him money and aggressively wants him to bring it back. That servant, not able to pay him back, says, give me more time. But this servant who has now been debt free, cleared of the king, doesn't show that same mercy. He throws that servant into jail. Word gets back to the king. The king is obviously upset, and the servant whom he previously canceled his debt throws him into jail. Jesus is the one that actually is describing this story as he describes forgiveness in the kingdom, and the fact that forgiveness is not just a moral thing to do where it's like, this is a morally nice thing to do to be forgiven. And forgiveness is not just, sometimes what we hear often in psychology is you're forgiving not necessarily for the perpetrator's benefit, but for the victim's benefit. And it's for you to be released. But Jesus talks about forgiveness in this story about the main reason we forgive is because we've been forgiven. So the forgiven will forgive. And I know that's easy to say, but very hard to do in your life. But I want us to focus on specifically what about forgiving people in the areas where we have wronged others. You see, we don't always look at it that way. The servant didn't look at it this way. In this moment with my daughter, I was able to look at it this way. But there's times in my life where I'm not able to do that. There's times when, let's say, me and my wife get into an argument or a disagreement, and I'm like, well, I don't understand how you could do that. And then sometimes the Holy Spirit will just bring to my remembrance, okay, well, you did this in that situation. I want to quickly say, well, it's not the same. It's not the same situation. And we only say that because, you know, we don't want to forgive in that moment. But when we think about it, we're like, yeah, it's the same. And if you become aware to that, it's hard to withhold forgiveness in that area because you've been forgiven in that area. The bigger picture of the text and the bigger picture with God is He's forgiven us of everything. He's forgiven us of things that we haven't even done yet. And because of that, we should forgive others. But I want us to focus, I want to challenge us today about how about the areas where we've wronged others and we've been forgiven. So, in the money sense, are you struggling to forgive someone that owes you money even though you were forgiven when you didn't pay someone back? Are you struggling to forgive someone that has lied to you even though you were forgiven for lying? And the list goes on and on. So sometimes when we're struggling to forgive someone, I want to challenge you to pray and say, God, is this an area that I've been forgiven? We're not even talking about the broad range of forgiveness right now because that principle is clear. But it's quite likely that sometimes we are struggling to forgive in areas that we've been forgiven. And obviously when we look at that, that's that's like the definition of hypocrisy. And none of us want to be a hypocrite. But on a very human level, I think that we can understand that it is important to show that same grace and mercy that was given to you. Because if we don't do that, we're living in a life that we don't even expect. The standard that we are holding others to, we are not even living by. I want to challenge us to just focus on those areas right now where possibly when we dig a little bit deeper, we've wronged people in those same areas. And maybe you haven't received forgiveness in that area, but you want to be forgiven in that area. So it just ties it back to the same thing. Then for you should be able to forgive others. So that's it for today. Take care. Be blessed.